Hello everyone, I'm Randy Arrington and welcome to the 32nd episode of Page Valley Living. We're here today at Yagers Spring, just north of Luray on the west bank of the Hawksbill Creek. Not only does this natural spring pump millions of gallons into the Hawksbill, it's also the site of the Redwell Isabella Furnace Historic District, which dates back to an early iron ore furnace that was first fired in 1787. Soon, this site could also be included as part of the Luray Hawksbill Greenway and under a planned 900-foot extension of the linear pedestrian park. Today we'll be talking with Rod Graves, local historian of Luray Caverns, and with Bill Dudley here, a longtime local realtor and president of the Luray Greenway Hawksbill Foundation. We'll talk with Mr. Graves about the history of the site and with Mr. Dudley about a little bit about the plans for this planned expansion of the Greenway. We'll talk about all that and more in just a moment, but first let's take a look at this week's headlines. And now looking back at the week that was in the Page Valley. Superintendent Jeff Reinbold announced on Tuesday that Chad Tenney of Luray has been named the next Deputy Superintendent of the National Mall and Memorial Parks in Washington, D.C. Tenney is currently Chief of Commercial Services for the National Park Service's National Capital Region and most recently stepped in as Acting Superintendent at Big Bend National Park in Texas while a permanent superintendent was being hired. With 14 years in the National Park Service, Tenney has also managed concessions at Shenandoah National Park and Grand Canyon National Park. He begins his new duties at the National Mall on August 11th. Last Tuesday, a D.C. developer presented plans to the Luray Council for renovations to all three levels of the brick structure at 15 Campbell Street, the former location of the Art Warehouse. The plans for the nearly 34,000 square foot multi-use development includes 20 apartments, co-work space, a gym, a commercial kitchen for rent, a restaurant, and a music venue. The developer signed a contract on June 10th for the right to purchase the building, with a 90-day study period ending shortly after Labor Day to test the feasibility of the development plans. The Luray Planning Commission will be discussing the proposal at its next meeting at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, August 14th. In the world of sports, check out PageValleyNews.com for the latest information on upcoming physicals needed for all fall athletes, as well as dates and times for tryouts and the beginning of practice, which is now just days away. And now looking at the weekend ahead in the Page Valley on Friday, August the 2nd, from 6 to 9 p.m. It's a cruise-in down on 1st Street in Shenandoah. And this Friday at 7 p.m. it's Music Bingo at Valley Cork on East Main Street in Luray. On Saturday, August the 3rd, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., it's the Daughter of the Stars Farmers Market on East Main Street in Luray. At 11 a.m., it'll be the 3rd annual Cardboard Boat Regatta, hosted by the Page Alliance for Community Action, also known as PACA, and that'll be held out at Lake Arrowhead. From 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., it's the Summer Craft and Sip at Wisteria Farm and Vineyard out on Marksville Road near Stanley. 2 to 3 p.m. on Saturday is the History of the Shenandoah Rail Yard with Mason Cooper at the Town of Shenandoah Museum and Welcome Center on 1st Street. At 7 p.m. on Saturday, there'll be a 45-minute carillon recital at the Singing Tower in Luray, across from Luray Caverns. And at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday night at the Rebecca J. Graves Regional Center for the Performing Arts in downtown Luray, they'll have jazz with the Nat Adderley Jr. Quartet. And finally, on Sunday, August 4th, at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, another 45-minute carillon recital at the Singing Tower in Luray. And from 5 to 7 p.m. on Sunday, music under the arbor at Wisteria Farm and Vineyard. And that's the headlines from the past week in the Page Valley. Episode 32 of Page Valley Living is being recorded on Thursday, July 25th, and will air on Wednesday, July 31st. And we're back here at Yagers Spring with Mr. Rod Graves, local historian. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Yes, sir. Pleasure.
So at one time, right here around Yagers Spring, there was almost like a little village here. It all got started back in 1787 with a man named Pennybacker. Can you tell us about those early days here at Yagers Spring?
Yes, sir. The original property had several owners prior to this. Actually, the first one was an ironmonger in Winchester, or close to Winchester, and it got sold, and it had been to the Ruffner family prior to that.
Okay.
But the furnace, when operation, when it was set up, was purchased by a gentleman by the name of Derek Pennybacker, and Derek Pennybacker set up a forge here, but did not have a blast furnace yet. In the year prior, in 1786, or thereabouts, 87. And his forge, when this was brand new, it was called Spring Forge.
Okay.
And I discovered that from an original ledger from this furnace that a friend of mine owns.
Okay.
Now, I've got a ledger from just after that, but this is from the very beginning. He has the very day on there, after building in the ledger, of building the blast furnace, and the forge is the part that hammers the metal out.
Yes.
Well, he was bringing other metals in from other places, so he builds this furnace, and he dedicates it. And even in the ledger, that was the last day they called it Spring Forge.
Okay.
And then it was called Redwell Furnace.
Okay.
And this was considered the Red Well, was a spring.
Now, why is it known as Redwell Isabella furnace?
Well, Redwell Furnace was the name that Dirk Pennybacker gave to it.
Okay.
He came from Hopewell Furnace, is where he did his apprenticeship in iron smelting and blacksmithing.
Okay.
Prior to this, which is one of our first national historic parks.
Okay.
Up in Pennsylvania. And
Okay.
A wonderful place. It mirrors this a lot in many respects. But he built that, and then September 21st, 1787, he went into blast here, and he was in business till about, himself anyway, up to about 1800 till he died.
Okay.
Just a little north of here.
Okay, and then that's when it assumed the name later on as Isabella furnace.
Well, it got new ownership
Okay.
by a fellow by the name of Benjamin Blackford. Bought it from Maryland, and
Okay.
Blackford was a very well-to-do ironmonger.
Okay.
And
Okay.
he came from what's now the area of Sharpsburg, Maryland,
Okay.
to come and buy this property. He had negotiated with his heirs, his son, which inherited the furnace after him, Pennybacker's son.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was a failure and didn't do well with it. There was conversations between the two of them, and they had let the place go derelict by the time Blackford had bought it. And he was not happy, and I think there was almost a lawsuit pending out of it at the
Okay.
time. One of the first in the county, actually. And he dropped it and continued to expand the place and modernize it, and he built many buildings here. This particular building here was built prior to that, though.
Yeah.
But
Well, one of the things I find really, really interesting that I've heard you talk about before, I mean, not only the history and how the history of this place really goes back to the beginnings of Luray and Page County, but a lot of the iron that was forged here at this furnace wound up in some really remarkable places, not only in the history of this county, but in the history of this country.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The primary resources they had here to produce was lots of different things. The main money maker was called pig iron. Now, why do they call it pig iron? Well, you have the main body of a pig, and then you have its sapling, or its little babies, and those were called pig irons, and so that's why that developed like that, because of the way it went into a trough, and that developed that way. But they also did some most incredible decorative arts, what we call decorative arts today, anyway.
Okay.
Castings here from the very beginning.
Right. But I think I've heard you say that some of these materials that were produced here went into the first structure that was
Yes.
built in Luray, as well as some of the construction at Monticello and University of Virginia.
Well, the furnace, when it went out of blast in 1841, the stones were taken from here to build many houses downtown, to build the town. Now, this place here, the most significant thing about why I've always been interested in it since 12 years old, is that this place gave birth to the town of Luray.
Wow.
Luray would be a wide spot in the road had it not been for this spring. That's why they came here, was because of the spring. And they did a lot of decorative stoves, pots, you name it that was iron, they would cast it. And there was a lot of blacksmiths down here, so there was a lot of industry down here.
Well, you did something in 2005 to help preserve the history of this site. Tell me about that.
Well, it's a Virginia Historic District.
Okay.
We got it named as a Virginia Historic District, which is a very difficult thing to do. Joe Davis and I did, the late Joe Davis and I did that. And that was the culmination of at least 2 years worth of work to get that done. But it's like I said, this is a really, really important site. A lot of the castings that were here, to answer your earlier question, some of those castings, the stoves, the decorative stoves that they had here, 5 and 6 plate jam stoves, would go to Monticello for Jefferson's home when he was constructing it.
Okay.
And then also at the Rotunda at University of Virginia, the weights and the stoves in that building were all cast here.
No kidding.
Yes,
That's
sir.
interesting. Let's walk down a little bit here, because I had some unique windows that look fairly original, and you told me before that this end of the building where
Yeah.
this crack is
Right
on down
here.
was added. And tell me about what happened at these windows and a little bit about this new addition.
Well, in 1961 or 62, this building right here burned over there at that site over there. If you want to see over there, that burned. It was another stone cabin, is what they called them during the period.
Right.
And this building right here, as far as the ledgers can tell us and history tells us, this was where the iron furnace workers would eat. This was their cafeteria.
Is this where they would be served or something at
Yeah,
these
no,
windows?
this area is all brand new.
That's all brand new. Okay, that's all brand new.
And this was reconstructed for kind of a pleasurable place to be. It's very beautiful here by people in the 1960s that owned it, the Smith ladies.
Okay.
But yeah, all this from here on was there. There was a brick addition built this way that was torn down, and that addition, we don't know a lot of what it looked like, but it is on a period map from right after the Civil War.
Okay.
So
Look, I want to switch gears on you just a little bit here, because you have a unique perspective on this site due to your affiliation with Luray Caverns and knowledge of karst topography and underground reservoirs. What is special about Yagers Springs in terms of being a natural resource?
it's, this place historically is close to my heart. It always has been since a very young age.
Right.
I've always wanted to see it preserved. I almost bought it at one time, actually. But the spring here, Randy, it dumps 8 million gallons of water on average per day.
8 million gallons a day.
8 million gallons, and then it's one of the largest tributaries or blue holes to the Shenandoah River, which also helps feed, of course, the Chesapeake Bay, which is naturally it's phenomenal as much as it is a historic, phenomenal place.
You told me something interesting earlier. When you all at Luray Caverns, you have something at the end of the tour called the Wishing Well.
Right.
And you've donated quite a number of dollars over the years to many different charities. Each year when you go in and clean out that wishing well, what happens here at Yagers Spring?
Well, I'm told, I've never seen it physically myself, but I don't doubt it a bit because of the people that told me that saw it. They said that 3 days later that this gets murky.
After you clean out
The spring
coins.
does. So, and it does not surprise me this is connected. This is definitely attached to a cave. I wanted to dive there, but my wife said she'd leave me if I did. So,
Well, let me ask you this last question before we let you go on this segment here. What is, you've spent a lot of time researching this place and working on it here from both a historical perspective and you kind of hit on the natural resource part. Why is it important to preserve this site?
I feel strongly about this all my life, is that I feel like if we don't preserve, we lose track of who we are and where we're going if we don't preserve what we have. In England, they serve as a model for preservation, and that's why you can identify history and culture, the culture of the people with that place. And this, like I said, gave birth to the town of Luray. It just wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Mr. Rodriguez, thank you very much for being with us today. In our next segment, folks, we're going to walk down to a little waterfall here where there may be a new bridge over at as part of the extension of the Hawksbill Greenway. And we'll be talking with Mr. Bill Dudley about those plans. We're here now along the Mill Run at Yagers Spring to talk with Mr. Bill Dudley about the extension of the Greenway to Yagers Spring here. Mr. Dudley, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Randy. It's just a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Have you ever sat back since you started this project over the last couple of years, closed your eyes, and imagined what this is going to be like one day?
Well, it would be fantastic if we can make this happen over the next few years. I think it could be a real destination for people to come to. Besides those of us that like to walk, it would add about 1,200 feet to the Greenway, but it'd be a wonderful spot for folks to come picnic. We'd have interpretive materials here so they can understand what actually happened here at this furnace.
It could be beautiful. And the history that we talked about with Mr. Graves is so incredible, and all the things that happened here. And I want to take a quick second to explain to folks, we're standing kind of on the creek bank. That's why I appear a little taller than Mr. Dudley. I am actually a little vertically challenged, but normally not looking this tall. But now, the Greenway Foundation, which you are the president of, first approached the Luray Council in 2022 about this project. Where did the idea first hatch, and how did it grow legs?
Well, I'll tell you actually what happened was we wanted to tie the Greenway to Ralph Dean Park.
Okay.
And honestly, we could not get up Linden. So it was just too much of an incline to get up Linden. So, and we tried a couple of other alternative possibilities, but to be ADA compliant, we couldn't do it.
Right.
So actually, this has always been a dream of Mayor Dolphinmeyer.
Okay.
And so we thought, after the idea came up, that this would be a wonderful extension of the Greenway.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, it's going to add a historical interpretive element, you know, to the Greenway.
Wonderful.
With the work that we're going to do here.
Wonderful. Well, now, you had the Phase 1 feasibility study. That was conducted by Racy Engineering. What did that show us about this project, good and bad?
Well, the good thing is, with that engineering study, you know, a lot of times you'll find some little insect or something that has to be protected. We had
like the bats under the bridge?
Right, like the bats under the bridge. So the good news was that we didn't find any animals or anything like that that would stop us from doing this.
Right.
We did, however, find during the archaeological part of Phase 1 that we needed to do some more study.
Okay.
And so that's where we are now. We're it's still in Phase 1, but we're looking toward an additional archaeological study as part of Phase 1.
And when we went off camera a minute ago, Mr. Graves just told us that that study is going to happen in September, that they're going to come out here and do some digging and see what they find.
Yes, that's exactly right. And also that should provide us more interpretive type information, you know, as we go down the road. I'm very proud. With Phase 1, it was a $50,000 effort, and the Greenway Foundation pledged to raise half of that. We were fortunate enough, we applied for and received a forestry grant, a grant from the Division of Forestry for $25,000 to you know, satisfy our pledge to the town. The additional archaeological study, which we're doing now, is a $60,000 cost.
Okay.
And the Greenway Foundation, again, pledged to do half of that.
Okay.
And we are so blessed that our $30,000, we've already received $20,000 from a wonderful couple that's really into philanthropy and to preservation. They don't want their names to be known, but they're just wonderful that they've given us $20,000 toward our $30,000 pledge. And of course, I'm happy to say that Luray Caverns has donated $5,000 already toward that. So we're $25,000 toward our $30,000 pledge as far as our half of the next study.
And that's Phase 2?
That is the continuation of the archaeological part of Phase 1.
Okay. What will phase 2 be?
Phase 2 will be when we really get the go to do construction plans.
Gotcha.
Okay, that
Very
will
well.
be phase 2.
Now, I know you probably don't want to answer this question, but how much is this going to cost us?
Well, it's not cheap. You know, we're looking at about, if you're on the Greenway, and for those of us that love to walk the Greenway, if you're in the most northern part of the loop, at about 11 o'clock, if you're at the loop, at about 11 o'clock, we need a bridge right there.
Right.
Okay? So we'll have to have a bridge there. Then we'll pave coming down, as you see here.
Yeah.
And then when we get to this dam, also known as a weir, we'll need another structure here, combination dam and bridge to get over here.
And those bridges make it a little
They make
more
it
complicated.
very, very complicated,
Yeah.
and you know, when you're building in a floodplain and that
Right.
kind of thing. But we're looking at a project. Our capital campaign, when we get to that phase, will be more than $2 million.
Well, I tell you, that might sound like a big figure to a lot of people, but if you're familiar with the Hawksbill Greenway in Luray, you know that it is one of the crown jewels of the town. People have come here from all over the state and other states to look at it, to see it as an example of something they want to do. I think it is magnificent. I think this is a great idea. And to wrap us up here, let us know, what do you think will be, when completed, what do you hope this project accomplishes?
Well, I just hope it accomplishes the preservation of this extremely special site. And I think in itself, for a lot of folks, it's going to be a destination.
Yeah.
People will learn, you know, about the spring. They'll learn about everything that went on here that, you know, Mr. Graves has talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, for those of us that like to walk, we're going to have more space to walk.
That is outstanding, outstanding. Mr. Dudley, thank you so much for
Thank you,
being here
Eddie.
with us today. We want to thank you and Rod Graves for your time today. We also want to thank you for everything that you've done for our community and everything you will continue to do for Luray and Page County.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that's the conclusion here of episode 32. We want to remind you, if you like today's episode, to hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Page Valley News on YouTube. As always, we want to thank Eleanor Arrington for her work behind the camera today and in the editing room. And also, as always, don't forget our furry friends down at the Page County Animal Shelter and help them find a forever home. Until next week, I'm Randy Arrington saying, enjoy that Page Valley living.